Good morning, Bitcoiners. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. Where do I sats? Says a bon matin, Nolan. Bon matin. Where do I sats? Hope you're doing good. B for victory. Bon matin, Bitcoiners. We got a lot of French going on this morning. We love it. Good morning, all. Fine day to stack. Is it? We're running up this morning. I've noticed some price exchange rate increases. So not as good as the other day, but we're fine, right? We don't need to worry about that too much. It's all good. Good morning, Robert. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, Bud. Hope life's good. Good morning, all. Anyone going, oh, P-Man, talking about, yes, thanks for reminding me. I did tell people I was going to come, but I might be headed to Vermont today. I got some stuff to do. And we got the Saint Jean Baptiste. It is the Fête Nationale on Saturday, which is a Quebec holiday. Well, I think Saint Jean Baptiste is a holiday everywhere, but it is generally regarded as a national holiday in Quebec. And I'll be going to some fireworks and celebrations, which I normally go to. It's really cool in the townships, which is a part of Quebec that I'm from. A little more bilingual, let's say, than most places in Quebec. What's really cool is the town I'm from is predominantly English, and the town next to us is a little more French. So what happens is the local governments get money for fireworks and festivities, and we get a little bit for Saint Jean Baptiste from the Quebec government. We get a little bit from the federal government to subsidize the cost of fireworks in Canada Day, which is exactly 1 week later. So really cool. My town and the next town actually just pool the budgets. So my town gives the town next to us the Saint Jean Baptiste money, and the town next to us gives my town, where I grew up anyway, I don't live there anymore, the Canada Day money. So there's, instead of two parties, each town has one party, and lots of people come, and it's a lot of fun, right? So between 1 week and the other, you get some really good, fun times. Very different than the Saint Jean festivities in Quebec City, which I have attended. And they are heavily psilocybin induced, if I recall. So there you go. Do I do a meetup before leaving for Vermont? I'm not sure. I got a few things to do today. So if I don't end up leaving today, but I probably will. It looks like I'm going to be leaving today. So I probably won't make it, but we'll see. CK reminding everyone with a good morning. And I think I saw, there we go. Yes, indeed. 7 more subs. I've got another chapter ready to release as one of those graphic novel audiobooks. So we're getting there. We're getting there. There'll be a lot more coming out right after. All right, team. Let me just remind you all that the sun is really, really up. Bitcoin really, really running. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. And boy, is there a lot. But before we get to what's new, before we get there, we got a little take a little time to underline the Moscow times we live in, right? So what are the Moscow times? Well, CTV News in Canada says they're worried about inflation here in Canada too, right? The money for the fireworks might not go as far as it did last year or the year before. Who knows? But CTV News, which is a major Canadian news outlet, says high government spending means more inflation, ? It's complicated. Economists say it's complicated. Okay, it's complicated. These are the same economists and experts we're going to be talking about a bit today. Here's another one. We've been talking about Ron DeSantis, and some people think he can do well in a presidential run. I don't believe so, but NBC has this headline because they're kind of worried about him coming along, maybe, or who knows what's up, or maybe they're trying to make him edgy and dangerous, right? That's what Sticks, Ice, and Hammer believes, but we're not here to add punchlines. Here's their headline from NBC: the dangerous demonology of Ron DeSantis. DeSantis' quasi-religious shadow gospel with roots in Cold War anti-communism and the satanic panic of the 1980s is more dangerous than you might think. So remember, the demonology is what's dangerous, right? But here's the best one. This one is just too good, right? I mean, it's really hard to find ones that are this high quality. Oh, hold on, I'm missing my notes here. Oh no, there it is. So this one's great. This is from just the greatest guys in NBC. You know, if you believe Glenn Greenwald, then you'll think of NBC as nothing more than a CIA or NSA, National Security Agency's leak machine, right? It's where you put your leaks and then they get broadcast out. That's what Glenn Greenwald says. That's what Assange said, right? So, you know, we'll see. But here's the headline from NBC News. It's a doozy, right? All right. So published yesterday, the conspiracy candidate, what RFK Jr.'s anti-vaccine crusade could look like in the White House. RFK Jr. is a conspiracy theorist running for president as a Democrat. Experts fear his anti-vaccine activism threatens public health in America. So this journalist is named Brandy Zadrozny. And, you know, so she says she went with him and he's this guy. And it's the typical fake news media. Like it was on a cliff. He stands on the edge of a cliff with his 3 dogs sitting at attention, waiting for a treat from his pocket, right? And she does manage to say that it really made her afraid the whole time with him, right? I'm trying to find the actual quote here because it's pretty excellent. Anyway, I don't see it there. So one of the interesting things she picked up on to like qualify him as a super weirdo is that he's into falconry. Weirdly, I was talking about falconry with my kids yesterday for what reason, I don't know. So he is a falconist, right? Like our friend Charles Hoskin, whatever his name is, the guy from that fucking coin. Who knows what it's called? Cardano, that's what it's called. He's into falconry, which is cool. So he was explaining he had these 3 dogs and they just were totally disciplined next to him. So the journalist thought it was really weird and she starts asking him about it. And she was wondering why he wouldn't feed the dogs either because of how attentive they were. And so she goes on this big, long, sort of tangent about Kennedy and his treatment of these dogs. And she says, she quotes him here saying, it's something called an intermittent reward system, Kennedy, noticing my discomfort, explains of the lapse. I learned it from falconry. If you don't give an animal a treat every time, it actually makes them more obedient, which is what we've mentioned that many times about the formula for addiction and things like that, right? So this is what she writes. Something about the way the dogs are perched, salivating, their trusting eyes glued to Kennedy, reminds me of the way the world has recently been gripped by conspiracy theories, many of which Kennedy has helped spread. Right. So we're the dogs waiting for a treat. It's amazing. It's amazing. So thank you, Brandy, for calling me a dog. You know, it really is great coming from NBC. It really sort of solidifies some stuff. But so now put that all into the context of what we saw in the past few days. And speaking of MSNBC again, right? So we've been talking about the RFK debate with the $1.5 million prize. And of course, it's never going to happen, right? This guy is running away. Dr. Hotez, he did come on television yesterday, right? So Hotez did make it onto television yesterday. Where did he go? on NBC, right? So of course he goes on MSNBC, right, which is even faker than NBC, and he goes with Mehdi Hassan, right? So so he goes on Mehdi Hassan yesterday. He's still doing the lab coat thing, you know, like imagine you're in your home doing a Zoom interview, and in order for like the camera effects to be legitimate, I guess, he decides to put on his lab coat, which he always does. He's always putting his lab coat on, right? So he gets in there with his lab coat. And this is what he says, many thanks to Mehdi Hassan for hosting me this evening. I explained the problems of debating science on Joe Rogan with RFK Jr., and there are several, right? So then he goes on to list his reasons, right? I'm not a debater. Who knows about science? Now, remember, we actually did talk about you can have a champion, agreed. The skill of debating, nowhere close to the skill of being a scientist. So, there's definitely some leeway there. But what I want to know about his reasons, right? You don't think you can control those reasons? You don't think you can sort of limit the questions being debated to, like, why not say, hey, RFK, why don't you pick two things? Two things. That's it. No going on, because that was his thing. He goes off into tangents and talks about other things and da da da. Just like, what about the parameters of a debate, right? Who knows? So Hotez, just by going on that Mehdi Hassan show, I think has sort of surrendered the last bit of credibility for science, right? Anyone who's actually paying attention is not getting spun by these guys. I would put myself in the category. I'm not sure everyone would, but I did really want to see this guy and RFK debate because, again, I don't know any of this stuff. All I can do is tell who's lying and who's spinning, and that's about the extent of my qualifications to make any sense of what's going on with this vaccine thing. I'm never going to learn about the mRNA platform. I'm never going to have the vocabulary to understand it. And the best I can do is have people who have spent time understanding this debate. And then I can sort of say and tell who's got a more consistent argument, who's being more thorough, who's being less biased. And that's about it, right? That's all we can do. But we're not going to get it. So I think by not going on, he has sort of really abdicated and surrendered. It's complete surrender of an entire battlefront, which is, I think, vital for all parties interested in getting through this COVID thing and moving America forward, the world forward. Where are we headed with this stuff? So this was a complete abdication. And, as I like to call the allies in World War III, they sort of morphed into the all lies, right? So I've mentioned that many times. They're the all lies now. And I think this will just further solidify the all lies loss in the battlefield of science. Right? It's just the abdication of the complete field of battle. So the best they can do is to continue hallucinating, calling people names, but there's more to it, right? People pointed out yesterday. Now, remember, because I watched the Hotez episode. I'm not a big Joe Rogan consumer, right? I used to consume the clips as they peeled out on YouTube when he was on YouTube. I liked those a lot when they were like 10 minutes. I don't really do the 3-hour thing with someone. There's a few of them, like Alex Jones, because it's so entertaining, hard to deny. I watched some of the RFK one, though, not even all of it. But I did watch years ago Hotez because I was very interested in someone offering a point of view about the vaccines that wasn't fear-mongering on either side. Right. And I'm sick of hearing vaccine illness, and I'll even say that died suddenly, right? I don't know about the safety of the vaccines, but I will say died suddenly looked like a bit of a scam documentary. And I've said here many times, all documentaries, all the medium of documentaries are scams because they're not for debate. They're to persuade you, right? They're essays. They're long essays based on persuasion. And you can use the Michael Jackson documentaries that are on Amazon as one of the best examples, right? You can watch one of those documentaries, the one that says he was a pederast and all that stuff, 100% convinced, right? And then you watch one defending him, and by the end of it, you're 100% convinced that he was innocent, right? So now I don't know anything about Michael Jackson. We don't even need to litigate it. All I'm trying to say is documentaries are not designed to make you smarter. They're designed to push a point. And that's what's already been good about the medium of your general podcaster, right? Where at least you go a little deeper, you can have a little bit of pushback. But I saw, there's another show out there called The Breakdown, right? Nathaniel Whitmore. It was on CoinDesk for a while. I helped hire the guy years ago. or at least found a place for him. He was helping me with the event years ago. So his show, is exactly like Joe Rogan's show, which is a non-expert interviewing an expert. And he said yesterday on his Twitter, this debate culture is fucking stupid, bro. It's fucking dumb, man. All right. You know what's really dumb? One idiot interviewing one expert, Joe Rogan included. Right? Now, I like Joe Rogan, but he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He had Hotez on and got rolled. Right now, that's who knows if he got rolled, but he spoke with Hotez and believed him. But the one thing he did do in the Hotez interview that I think is interesting, and people have been bringing it up because this is the one thing I remember. Remember, I was sort of talking about his weird smile. I couldn't remember where I got it from. Legendary Energy shared it yesterday, and it was the part of the interview. It's what I remembered best, where Joe Rogan actually tells him, well, you don't look very healthy. Like, why am I listening to you? You're fat. We don't fat shame here, right? But if we're talking about health, let's be honest, fat ain't healthy. And Joe Rogan, who is like the picture of health, now people can say he's roided out and this and that. I don't know what he does, right? I don't know what he's on or anything like that. But it doesn't sound like he's an unhealthy person, right? I hear him talk about health all the time. Seems healthy to me. Again, look at RFK. I mean, you don't really get a sense of it when you see him on pictures or on the internet, or when he's sitting, he sits like this a lot in his podcast. If you see him in real life, he's a fucking stud, man. Like, he's fucking jacked, right? And I only really saw it when you're in person with him, right? And you can just tell that he's in excellent shape. So this Hotez one, it was hilarious. It's where Joe Rogan, says, you look incredibly unhealthy. And he's there like, yeah, I should do better. There's even, Susie B. She's a dentist and a big stat stacker. She even has a picture of him where he was doing this really terrible smile. And she zooms in and you can see that he hasn't cleaned his teeth in like 10 years. He's just he's got extra teeth that are plaque. Like, between his teeth, he's got white plaque buildup. It's just like, okay, and you're the guy telling me about the health. You want to be my latex salesman. And like, you want to be my latex salesman. Vandalay Industries healthcare, right? This guy is not healthy telling you how to be. No, I get it. Vaccines, science, not the same as actual health. But really, in the end, right, it's the same as what we were mentioning with the inflation in Canada. Experts say more money isn't more inflation. It's the same thing. Health is not as complicated as the experts are telling you it is. It's just not. Right? It's not that complicated. Now, if you look at a healthy person, I'm more likely to listen to them for health advice. It's the same with finance, right? Do I take financial advice from a poor fiat slave? No, I don't. I don't even listen to these people, and I never will, right? Why should I? Why should I? So how could I have anything to learn from them? Now, I have all kinds of time and attention for people who are giving me financial advice that are much wealthier than me. Of course I do. I'm not saying I have all the answers or anything like that, but just like economy, just like economics, just like saving money, once you understand Bitcoin, it's easy. It shouldn't be complicated. That's what we're after. We're after finance becoming easier. We're after economics becoming easier. We want to lower the IQ required to participate in modern society. We do not want a confusopoly. We don't want any of that stuff. And when you stop and you look further over to science and health, it's kind of the same thing, right? Health is not as complicated as some people say. Each individual case is different. There are tons of people who have complicated health realities, right? So I'm not talking about them. I'm talking in generalities right now. Economics and health, not nearly as complicated as some people say. So now that we're starting to realize that, right? So this expert on health being unhealthy, and we're starting to see these contrasts, it becomes more and more evident that science is not going to be a battlefront where actual things that are logical are going to help progress the the debate forward and bring us to some unanimity. We're seeing a ton of hallucinations. We're seeing a ton of people say, we're seeing a ton of people say that the basically getting caught further in their fake prison and their echo chamber. Now, you can even tell because everything we learned from RFK the other day is all stuff we've kind of heard before, right? None of it was new, right? None of it was new. Everything he said in that interview was said before, stuff we've heard, and that's what makes it so appalling that there was no debate, because the only thing we haven't heard is these two sides at the same time. And isn't it amazing? Take Joe Rogan, for example. Isn't it amazing that he is like an actual fight commentator? Like that's what he does as a side job. Like it's just a funny story, right? As a side job, he's a fight commentator. And he was willing, a professional fight commentator, was willing to organize this debate, and I think it could have been good, right? And here's how it is a total rout. And Cernovich again, I'm telling you, Cernovich is probably the most important internet dad there is out there, right? He's just he reminds me of someone in high school who was sort of a few years older, but had a lot of the answers and the tricks on how to get through high school, right? That's sort of what he reminds me of. So here's what he said about what's going on with yesterday, this guy going on Mehdi Hassan and Hotez not debating. So, and I think this is sort of the kill shot, right? Sickly looking public health experts are delighted to share talking points in a forum where their assertions will not be contested. They are now asking people to pretend they are shy guys who don't want attention. To no one's surprise, the NPCs with Ukraine in bio go along with it, right? And that's sort of the end of it, right? That is it. These guys are now trying to say they're shy guys. They're not capable of doing this. Oh, it's science. I don't actually want to go on television. But we've seen that that's what's going on, and they do want to go on TV, but they're not able to go and debate this stuff. So, again, I understand good reasons to avoid debates, but it is disingenuous to say you couldn't create parameters. You had a professional fight organizer. That's what he is. Joe Rogan is that. Are you telling me they couldn't put parameters that he could insist on? Of course he could, right? This is not a shy guy who can't handle this stuff. Joe Rogan is not the shy guy. The other ones who say they're shy guy, I don't know. So I think that's it. I think they have actually abdicated this territory. There will be no debate. There will be nothing like that. And to me, the upshot of it is that we can now assume, right, when the experts sort of don't have any real good reasons, right? The one they said, oh, the format, don't know, right? We could have found a way to deal with that, right? You could have made specific claims and only those specific claims are debated, and that's it. We agree on the 2 or 3 specific claims, and that could have taken away their worry about, RFK is not a credible counterparty. He changes his mind about things. I don't want to go down a huge rabbit hole. You could have saved all that stuff. So when there are no good reasons for real, right? And if their good reasons are very easily debunked, the working assumption is that they just don't have the capability of arguing their point of view. So it doesn't mean it's true. It just means you can now assume they don't have reasons. You can assume it, right? It's the same as passing some public policy. Remember, I talked about it with SBF for a long time, right? When I saw what happened with the CFTC, the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission, banning election prediction markets in the United States before the midterms last year in 2022 September, and they gave no reason, right? Now, I would have taken any reason would have been good, but I got no reason. And what do you do when you get no reason? You assume corruption. There's no other answer, right? And in here, we should just assume they can't back this stuff up. That's the only logical conclusion you can make out of these circumstances. Now, I wish it wasn't so. I wish we could see these things debated, but it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, Elon Musk jumps in as well and says any scientist who refused to be questioned is anything but a scientist. Farzad Mesbahi Farziness says Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, RFK Jr. doing more to dismantle big pharma than any politician in the United States combined, right? And Elon puts it, this is sort of where I'm at, right? Elon, again, has the sort of the moderate view. To be frank, we're lucky to have modern medicine. I'd be dead from malaria if it were not for chloroquine and doxycycline. But we should still question medicine rather than considering it sacred. The entire foundation of science is to question it, thereby coming closer to truth. Personally, I've been on this for a long time. You know, that whole sort of mimetic idea that lawyers are these scavengers and bad people, and you know, we don't have a heart. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I went to law school, and you grow up in that world, and you know, the lawyer jokes. Not complaining about lawyer jokes and being a victim. Not what I'm saying. But what I always wondered was why the hell doctors got away scot-free from this. Why were they saints and lawyers were so bad? Now, I've talked about Michael Crichton many times. And I mentioned when I was in law school, I did my dissertation on gene patenting and intellectual property within medicine. And it was sort of Michael Crichton who led me down that road. And he was of that same mind that I am about the lawyers, right? And the doctors. Why do the doctors, now he didn't make the contrast between lawyers and doctors. That was from my own personal point of view. But he was talking about the identity and the persona that doctors share within the wider society. And, you know, he himself was a doctor, don't forget. Michael Crichton was a medical doctor, Harvard-trained medical doctor, worked in an ER in Boston while he was a student, did his, whatever they call it when you're, you know, like an intern. There's a special word in residency. He did his residency there. And so, he did his residency there. And so, you know, invented ER, the show, by the way, right? I've mentioned that many times. Invented ER, the show, owned ER, the show. That's where his fortune actually came from. But he used to always talk about this when he was talking about the genetic ownership issues and gene patenting and all those things. And what he would say is, you know, basically you can have two doctors working next to each other, right? And one doctor here, you know, how's it going? They're going for lunch. They're meeting for lunch. One doctor tells them, oh, we're going to try this new experiment. We hope we can save these lives. A lot of benefits. Who knows? But the doctor next door could have already tried that same approach, right? No one's saying murder here, but his context was people who are going to die anyway getting experimental treatments, right? So that's the context. So we're not talking about murder. So what would happen is one doctor would say, we're going to try this drug and see how it goes, right? If a doctor next door working for a different hospital, different organization and all that had already tried that experiment, knew that it wouldn't work, he can't tell him. Trade secrets, right? Trade secrets. And because it's trade secrets, that doctor who knew that if you give this whatever to that patient, they're going to die, wouldn't tell him, right? So all he's saying, this is just a mental experiment. It's not even, there are no real people here, right? And his point, though, is that and he says things like this were happening at scale. And his point was that how do doctors maintain this infallible sort of pristine identity within our culture, even though they're doing some really nefarious things, not out of personal malice or they're not evil people. It's not a plot. It's just the incentive systems of how the health system is built in America that's producing these results and should be questioned. And probably the only way to question what's going on is to start denuding some of these doctors of this incredibly generous persona they've been given. And that's kind of what we're seeing here, right? That's why this debate is so important. It's probably the last morsel of dignity and respect that the healthcare folks could have gotten from people who are questioning narratives, questioning what's going on. Now, I understand there's a lot of people who doubled down, right? But I think exactly as Cernovich mentioned, and it's what we talk about all the time, it's really just the NPCs, right? It's just the NPCs. It's just more NPCs. Now, in the world of democracy, of course, every NPC is equal to a playable character, a Bitcoiner, but that's not really the way the world works, right? The NPCs, if they're not being led by people like Hotez who are abdicating territory, it's just going to continue. The route is on, right? So the way I see it now, we can continue to move forward as far as questioning narratives. We can assume things are as bad as they look. And I think that's a good thing, right? I think it's a good thing. Now, it doesn't mean you don't change your mind if new information comes to light, right? It doesn't mean that. But it just means this, right? So here's what he ends up saying. Here's Hotez manipulating you, right? Just so you get a sense of the shy guy thing and the NPC baiting that's going on here, right? This is a doctor. Doctor. Oh, doctors, right? They're such great people. Many thanks for all of your support these last few days. After Steve Bannon's dog whistle accusation and the Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, RFK Jr. pile-on, the online aggression, and even stalking for just bringing home a Father's Day cake, I don't know what to think or say. But the support from people in the scientific community, the great actors, artists, journalists, historians, philosophers, healthcare professionals, teachers, essentially those who take joy in learning new things and helping humanity, really lifted my spirits and my family's. Wow. The actors and the artists, they're behind him. No problem. What a list that he just listed. What a list, right? And to me, anyway, that I think underlines that this is a route, and we have now occupied the moral high ground as Bitcoiners, as people who are questioning the narrative, of people who are pushing for decentralization and not centralized messaging. This was a big win. This is a big win in World War III. Not debating in the end is a bigger win than having a debate, I think. Now, humanity would be better served by a debate, right? But that's not really what's going on here. This is a war of psychological influence. World War III is a psychological and economic war. Those are the main battle lines. And science was supposed to be a weak link in this battle for people who are questioning narratives, because the whole Battlefront seemed to have been armed and cloaked in the same language we see in central bank economists. It's complicated, the experts say, right? It's no such thing. So big win, big win. Now this sort of has helped RFK tremendously, right? This is a ton of attention. This is RFK sucking all the energy out of the room. This is RFK doing Trump-like stuff, but without the indignity of the way Trump does it, which we love, right? We love the humor of Trump. He's hilarious. But this would have been way messier if it would have been Trump. You would have had no way to peel new people into your movement and remain on the moral high ground. You know, I mentioned just like what RFK was mentioning about falconry, right? In that it's the inconsistencies that create the addiction that train the dogs, right? The intermittent reward system. Weirdly, that's always how Trump has been, right? Trump, and that's why it's sort of a love relationship that a lot of people have with him, right? He is 9 times out of 10 exactly what you want, but he's such a failure sometimes. And it can be so irritating for everyone involved, but that's sort of what makes you love him. He's infallible. He's fallible. He makes mistakes, but that's the intermittent reward thing, right? It's every time that he makes a mistake that's how he gets all these people that love him to death, right? Because it's been like that for quite a while. And that's what I've said for a while. I'm sort of done with. I'll always love him, but I'm not sitting around defending the crazy shit, the mistakes he makes here and there. And what we get with RFK is none of that. It's none of that, right? We get the same attention grabbing, the same energy filtering towards him, powering him up, getting him. What did he do right away yesterday? He went to San Francisco and blasted the situation over there, right? With the homelessness and the drug addiction. He underlined and contrasted San Francisco with West Virginia, underlining that the West Virginians have the same drug problem. They do not have the same homelessness problem. This issue really is about getting people off the streets. He was reading right off of the Michael Schellenberger San Francisco playbook. So good news, right? Very good news. So he also spent time yesterday. So now that he has all this energy, right? Now that everyone's paying attention to him, even the fake news paying attention to RFK, calling him a conspiracy theorist, right? We mentioned the first article from NBC saying conspiracy theorist. I wish I had the one line where she's like, it gives me chills after what he said, right? I wish I had that line somewhere. I think it might have been in her tweet. Oh yeah, that's where it is. I got it. Here it is. I just found it. It is in the tweet, right? This is it. This is that article I mentioned about the conspiracy candidate with the dog and the falconry and she's freaked out by the dogs, and the whole thing was about the foggy day, we were hiking, and the big bullshit narrative, right? So this is what she says. I've been reporting on Robert Kennedy Jr. and his anti-vaccine activism for over a decade. In May, I went on a hike with RFK Jr. to hear what plans the conspiracy theorist and long shot presidential candidate had for the White House. It was unsettling. It's unsettling, right? So, what I said at the very start of RFK's candidacy, the thing that I said he had going for him that no one else on the planet has, and the thing that weirdly was going to be synchronistic about everything that Bitcoiners want to see, because we want to go right back to Bank Secrecy Act. We want to go right back to the confluence of the Federal Reserve, the national security agencies, and media propaganda colluding together to put a deputization of the banking system and the financial system and the messaging system to make sure that there was narrative consistency for Vietnam, that they knew where the protest money was coming from, they understood where dissent was coming from, and certainly no one was to talk about what happened to JFK just the year before. So what I've been saying for a long time, sort of tracking the history of the word conspiracy theory, tracking the history of when these insidious forces entered the American system to this scale, a lot of it does go back to JFK. Remember, my prediction on RFK comes from last November. It had nothing to do with RFK. I knew nothing about him. It was just that narrative closure around JFK is important for the fourth turning, the change of eras, which we are all experiencing around us right now, the recalibration of the planet happening right now. So what I said at the time, and what I thought was so powerful about the RFK candidacy, was simply that you can't call him a conspiracy theorist. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. There's a moral high ground argument there, and it doesn't work because he can come back and say, well, what I've said many times, right? Anyone who calls him a conspiracy theorist, you just use this line. Well, they killed his dad died, and the dad's killer died, and so that was a dead end. And then his uncle earlier was killed, and his uncle's killer was killed, and his uncle's killer's killer was killed, and well, that's a dead end too then, right? So of all the people that have the right to ask questions about what the hell happened and can't be called a conspiracy theorist, it's him. He's the only guy. He's the end of it, right? So it is a useless attack on him. You can't call him a conspiracy theorist. He's not. He's a person with some questions, right? So it looks like they've fallen into the trap. They can continue to try and do it, but as an energy monster, right? He's gathered all of this energy now. He went to San Francisco. He also had a lot to say with Blinken. We continue to love the Blinken guy negotiating for us in China, right? The Blinken guy. He's out there like not exactly projecting strength, right? So it turns out that so he came back, had a bunch of crazy shit to say about Taiwan is China. We completely surrendering on that front as well, right? Because, well, here's the story about what's going on in Taiwan and China. I don't know if you know this. So he goes to China, Blinken. So he goes to China. He asks them, hey, do you guys want to set up like an emergency hotline phone, right? Do you want to put up a hotline phone between China and America to de-escalate if things get somewhere? And Xi just goes, no, it's good. We can get in touch. Don't worry about it. So right away, because obviously that would be used. The hotline phone is in, right? That's a month's worth of tensions, rising fake news propaganda. Didn't even allow it to happen, right? So you got to give Xi credit for that. You gotta, that was a clever move on the part of Xi. But here's what's actually going on. We found out, this is from Kim.com. If you look at the South China Morning Post, super shockwaves. Taiwan's People Party may shake up politics. There's an election coming up in Taiwan. And the election is all about a pro-China party rising and ascendant within Taiwan because they don't want the Ukraine situation to replay itself with America getting involved. So Kim.com says the Taiwanese are moving away from the ruling DPP, the Democratic People's Party. They don't want war with China. They see what happened to Ukraine. U.S. provocations against China will cost the pro-independence parties the next election. They asked the U.S. government to relax or China will win Taiwan without a fight. And that's what people are saying. They might just democratically choose Taiwan, which is what we've been saying forever, right? On this show, every morning, we have never said Taiwan is some red line for America. It's not. We're not going there. We're not defending them. It's never going to happen. And this is just proof that it is long run. Taiwan is part of China. It doesn't mean it's part of a national body that's China. It doesn't mean the CCP gets China. It might even be the reverse, that some people want to say that China joins Taiwan, but they're together. They are one thing. They're one thing, right? Now, one thing in terms of China is as varied and diverse as any place in the world, in a sense, right? China is so big, I understand very little of what's going on past the major cities. I've been to Shanghai and Beijing and spent some time in Hong Kong. But after that, I mean, how many languages do they speak in China again? There's a lot going on there that I have no clue about, right? It's just huge. And I don't know much about it, but I understand that people are quite different there. And the variance between Taiwan and other regions in China would be consistent with the amount of variety that exists within the country. So it's not about a hegemonic thing. I just think that eventually, in the long run, just like Hong Kong, right? I'm not happy about Hong Kong abdicate or abandoning a lot of the good things that made it and joining China straight up. I'm not happy about it, but it was inevitable. And the same thing can be said about Taiwan. It's inevitable. Like, it's not fun to say it that way, and it goes against some of the predisposed things you've thought about that part of the world, but that's what I see happening, and I don't think there's much we can do about it, right? I don't think there's much we want to do about it. Do we want a hot war with China over Taiwan? No. We do not. So he goes there, right? He gets totally wiped out. He has to come home and say, Blinken says, as I said, they do not support Taiwan independence, right? So he said that in the press conference when he got back. But the other thing that he was forced to discuss yesterday has everything to do with this peace plan. So we found out yesterday, Putin has shared with some folks. He had a meeting in Africa with a bunch of African leaders, or they came to him. I'm not sure where it happened. But he publicly showed the previously unpublished document from in front of South African president. And this was all about the peace plan, which had apparently been agreed to last April between Ukraine and Russia. And apparently, Boris Johnson from England came in and said, don't sign the deal. We're going to give you more weapons. We're going to give you more stuff. So now we find out that as the stories progressed, that this peace deal was more or less scuttled by the Americans, right? More or less scuttled. And so RFK, with all the energy he's gotten on the vaccine debate question, jumps right into this and questions let me just get the tweet here, and sort of questions the entire appetite, let's say, for peace, right? So that's what he's saying. He's saying that how can it be that we came so close and we've been left with this? So this is what he says. Last Friday, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken confirmed once again that the Biden administration has no intention of ending the Ukraine conflict peacefully. He dismissed the idea of a ceasefire and called for further transfers of high-tech weaponry and aircraft. So this was the other day. Let me find the one where he comes in, because David Sachs had discussed it as well. David Sachs had a long note on the failing counteroffensive and the peace that could have been, right? So he underlined this whole story about the deal that Putin was mentioning. And again, makes the point that this is an Afghanistan redux. That's sort of his conclusion, right? I know some of you may find it hard to believe that the realities on the ground are so at odds with the mainstream media's coverage, but it's worth recalling that the American public was assured for 2 decades that we were winning in Afghanistan. All of the reporting was revealed as a pack of lies when the Afghan army that we were supposedly standing up collapsed within a matter of weeks. At that point, the media stopped reporting on Afghanistan, just like it had stopped reporting on Iraq, instead of holding anyone accountable. Unfortunately, it looks like we're headed for a similar kind of outcome in Ukraine. The only question is when and how long Biden will be able to perpetuate a proxy war of choice that could have easily been avoided. And I saw someone yesterday, I forget who it was, they pointed out the only time the mainstream media had love for Trump was when he bombed Syria. And the only time they criticized Biden was when he left Afghanistan. So take that for what you will. And that sort of fits with my narrative bias. I don't know if it's true, but remember, we accept that we all have narrative bias here, right? So you're not coming here to hear anything different than that. So the sort of perpetual war piece here, the perpetual war piece mixed with the abdication of the science battlefront, I think means 2 of the principal moral high ground areas that we are fighting on in World War III are moving very rapidly over to the RFK camp. And it gets even better, right? It gets even better. So, we have this idea of a shadow government that is more powerful than the actual elected representatives. And that's really the heart of what RFK is getting to. That's why the conspiracy theorist title is so important. What he's talking about is that, more or less what you think you see as governance is not really the governance. There's something beyond that. And that's why all of his stories about JFK are so important. Remember, on that same Joe Rogan podcast, it wasn't just the vaccine stuff that he was going on about, right? He was talking about how his uncle and the Cuban situation went so bad, he knew the national security apparatus was lying to him. That's where he talked about scattering the CIA to the wind, and that he spent 1,000 days, the last 1,000 days of his life, in this war with American national security apparatus until he died. And so now we have RFK pushing the narrative that the people you see in control are not really in control. There is a shadow leadership that forces folks who are elected into doing certain things. And once again, remember what I said about the perfect president for the time, that it seems like the presidency always chooses the perfect person, or the perfect person finds the presidency at the perfect time. That was true about Trump, right? He was the great brain breaker, the great distorter of reality. He helped sort of unshackle many people from their illusions of what America was. And that's why, personally, I've always been a one-term Trump president supporter, right? Love Trump, but the work is done, right? The work is done. He's already he's already hit them with maximum force and destabilized the whole system, which is why I was always a Biden 2020 acceptor. I wasn't really going for it because it doesn't look it's not great. You don't really want to hope for it. But when it happens, I said, well, what could be better than Biden as president? There's nothing better, right? Watching him try to fulfill his mandate with his leaky, broken brain and his inability to say anything is perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect for Bitcoin. It's perfect for what we're doing. And it sort of reiterates the point that we have sort of puppet masters involved. And imagine that of all the things that could have happened in the past few days, right? We're talking about competency, war with China, what's going on, science, debates, vaccines, Ukraine, who knows? We get Joe Biden. It finally happened. Joe Biden in the same room with Fetterman, who we would love to see as president in 2024 if RFK can't make it, right? Because it would further cement this idea that you're not actually talking to the leaders. So here's what they did together. So first of all, the beauty is that Fetterman was the one speaking, trying to give a speech, right? And he can't speak, right? But what's amazing is that you've got Biden next to him, sort of like slightly embarrassed, but kind of like encouraging him. So Biden is actually like the intellectual together guy. Like he's the guy with the stronger brain next to Fetterman, which is hilarious, right? So here's what he said: Biden is here to commit to work with the governor and the delegation to make sure that we get this fixed quick, fast as well. Too, this is a president that is committed to infrastructure. Yeah, and then on top of that, the jewel of a law of inflation. So, it's unintelligible, obviously, right? I don't even know what he's talking about. But the beauty of it is that it exposes the puppet master narrative at the same time that that's actually what we're talking about. The real argument around what RFK is saying is that what you think are the governance systems are not real, whether it's in medicine, because we want science, we want medicine. No one's saying end of vaccines. No one's saying that. Nobody's saying that, right? But will I get another vaccine until I can get some proof? No, never. Not happening, right? Or if I can even get a debate, right? I'm not listening to anyone who's spinning and selling propaganda. That's all it comes down to. There's no trust at all in the system, and therefore I will not comply, right? And what are people going to do to make that better, right? Who knows? We don't know, right? So the good news is when you get all these people fighting the way they are, when you get all of this confusion, we can see entire swaths of territory being abdicated and major battlefronts in World War III being lost by the Allies. And having these folks there is important because, just like I said, he's got all of this attention now and energy, RFK, right? All of this energy and attention. And he's putting it towards the homelessness issue and the drug addiction in America. He's putting it towards what's going on in Ukraine. What they were there to do yesterday, Biden and Fetterman, was to build a overpass section of a highway. That's it. An overpass of a section collapsed, and it's a big thing to get. Now it's the busiest highway on the east coast of America. It's a big deal. They got to fix it, but low-hanging fruit, right? Of all the things in the world, this little section of a highway requires two broken-brain people to have a speech together. So did not work. So we know what's going on over there. Now, weirdly, all of this sort of happening on the same day, as well as now here's where things are going to get really fun and interesting for Bitcoin. So simultaneous to the shadow government, these debates that RFK is in, we also see yesterday a new where did I find? Oh, there we go. We find a new chair of the Council of Economic Advisors for Biden, right? Nominated last week. So he's been confirmed. His name is Jared Bernstein, and Balaji pointed out that so he got confirmed. Jared Bernstein. Balaji pointed out something he'd written in 2014, saying "Dethrone King Dollar, dethrone King Dollar." And Balaji underlines the government needs to drop its commitment to maintaining the dollar's reserve currency status. Who's saying that? Some Bitcoin maximalist? No, it's Biden's new top economist. So Biden's new top economist is a political money guy, right? Because the point of the US dollar not being reserve currency anymore is so that it's not entangled in foreign debt buying and all that stuff, which would weaken the exchange rate or otherwise influence monetary policy in America to the extent that it is. What he's basically saying is America doesn't want to be this reserve currency thing anymore because it takes away from our ability to spend domestically the way we want, right? So that sort of leads to what I've been saying here for a long time, that the destiny of the US dollar is to be a type of UBI, purely political money, right? To pay for housing, to pay for this, to pay for that, but that it is not a store of value anymore. It is not something for wealth accumulation. It's no longer for collecting, right? It's for spending. It already has been that way for a long time, but now instead of, what is money, right? You can say that in all kinds of different ways. My simple definition has always been it's something you can save, it's something you can spend, it's something you can invest, and it's something you can trade, right? Not the same as spend. So by eliminating the capacity to be saved and really be invested, it's really just more for spending and trading. And so because it's just for spending and trading, it will be purely political and will be basically UBI and food stamps. And how would that work exactly, right? What would be the alternate system? Well, just so happens that just a few days ago, the IMF announced that they're working on their global central bank digital currency platform, one digital fiat currency to rule them all. And William Middlecoop underlined, there you go, CBDC goes global as predicted some years ago. Already, 114 central banks are at some stage of CBDC exploration, with about 10 already crossing the finish line. And now that the IMF will have its own, I think you're starting to see what people are going to try here. It's going to be the BRICS2 shitcoin versus the IMF or whatever piece of the US dollar is still around competition, right? That's the sort of reset is the new money, which a lot of people have said, which is Bitcoin's opportunity to come right up the middle, right? That's what we've been predicting here for a long time, that it won't be this one or won't be that one, but the vacuum created by the option of those two will allow for the third option to rise. I continue to think that, right? And that's the reason why, right? That's the reason why, for all the things that RFK is currently talking about, right? All the energy he's currently gathering, clearly going to be a voice in the money battlefront as well. So the science battlefront, there's the third way that's appeared within the war battlefront. There's a third way that's appearing. And now in the money debate, there's going to be a third way that's appearing, which is why RFK is starting to suffer the same kind of censorship that Trump experienced, and that anyone who's sort of offering one of these third rail narratives suffers. And even things like Luke Rudkowski, who was a speaker at Bitcoin 2023 a few weeks ago, had interviewed RFK a little while ago, pulled off of YouTube yesterday. Old videos coming off of YouTube, Glenn Greenwald underlining that. So among other things, Glenn says it also underscores the vital importance of Rumble. Right, we broadcast on Rumble, and Luke Rudkowski says played a small clip of Robert Kennedy to comment on for my YouTube channel today. Oh no, so he didn't interview him. Excuse me. And my entire channel has been demonetized. Right, so one video, entire channel demonetized. Glenn Greenwald says the extent to which Google is acting to censor RFK Jr., especially as he rises in the polls against Joe Biden and receives more attention, is very striking and revealing. Big tech now routinely censors elected officials and, of course, did so to the U.S. sitting presidents, right? So not censoring the beauty of Fetterman and Biden, because we all have to hear it, but censoring our good man RFK. So wonderful day. Lots of winning. Let's see what the comments say. All right, let's see. Baghdad bomb Montez. Morning team. Yeah, the white lab coat. Love the white lab coat. I haven't seen that compilation. I love those compilation videos, Justin. Haven't seen it yet. I gotta look for that one. No, he cannot defend his position. He had to run away. He had to go on. Look, you go on Mediasan's show and you're done. Like you can't be respected anymore. It's over. He's not capable. I don't really watch Lex Friedman too much. Bitcoin Graffiti, little too. Lex Friedman has knowledge from a lot of different point of view on a diverse range of subjects. Yeah, I'm not against him or anything. I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, Lex is, whatever. But I'm not a huge fan. If the U.S. are the all eyes, does that make Bitcoin the praxis? I don't know. Maybe. No biodistributions clinical trial only. Yeah. So look, Huatiran I don't do too much time trying to actually understand the science. I don't believe I can, or at least that's not true. I could, but I don't want to spend that kind of time. That's like a year's worth of my time to figure this shit out, right? So, um, they love the attention as long as it's positive. They have it, yeah, yeah. As long as long as it's positive, definitely narcissism. And the Hippocratic Oath, no, they're done with that. They knew it would be big L if it happened, so I agree it's a win, but it definitely could have been bigger. Yeah, but you start pairing these wins in together, and you get where you're going. Homemade, you get where you're going. It is blasphemy. I do it all the time. I love doing it. Right. The original Planet of the Apes movies are good of how post 2020 science works. Unsettling. What a wimp. Such victims. Yeah. What a wimp, huh? What a wimp. Consider conspiracy theory in America. Yeah, I'll check that out. Tell that to the Uyghurs. I don't care about Taiwan as long as all men are removed food if they want to. Yeah, no, it ain't cool what's happening to the Uyghurs. That's for sure. But again, it's not worth, unfortunately, it's not worth us living under tyranny if it means, if all we get is a war with China and maybe the Uyghurs are freed, like doesn't jive well. RFK equals grifter, recycling guy. I mean, where's the grifting? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I don't see it. I would be disappointed if he was, but he looks sincere to me. People think Trump or Elon or Rogan or any of the social media grifters will save them. Not asking to be saved. I own enough guns and a farm. I don't really need to be saved per se. But I like people who fight back, right? Like, and I'm not asking for heroes, but I want someone to throw a punch. I would throw it. I don't have a problem mixing it up with these guys, but they have huge audiences. So there you go. Well, that is BS. Presidents suck back to JFK. Yeah, they do. Well, I was a fan. Look, you gotta respect the skills of Nixon. You gotta respect the skills of Clinton, right? The skillful. Now, there's a lot to criticize, but you can't deny the horsepower, right? Real. We love Fetterman. We do loud noises. It's embarrassing being an American. No, it's not. Well, it's always semi-embarrassing to be an American because everybody sort of has something to say. But look, it's hard to be at the forefront of this stuff. Everyone else stands on the shoulders of Americans when it comes to, a lot of the good stuff in our world. It's like, a lot happens in America that is still amazing. But yeah, there's some embarrassment. Would have been a great time with Fetterman to announce the railroad over the. They didn't announce that, didn't they? Didn't they announce the railroad over the Pacific recently? I thought I heard that. I think that was in my running once for fake news. Yeah, so I think that's what I mean, Ken. I think you put it perfectly there. Yeah, it's embarrassing that other countries still follow America to that extent. I was anti-vaccine even before this fiasco. There's plenty of evidence that they do not work. Listen to the doc by Andrew Kaufman. Yeah, I mean, I did know about some of the stuff from RFK, and there were a few more vax people. Like I pursued the autism thing for a while, and that didn't come up with any proof or any insight, just wanted to know what was going on with the debate, why they were anti-vax people. And I understood early that the business model of vaccines was a problem. And because they were so commercially capable of hitting the market because of the morality question and the ethics, once I heard the follow the money argument around vaccines, I was very skeptical. So I've never gotten one of those flu shot things or anything like that, right? The verbiage has nothing to do with the action. Listening to Jekyll on right now. Great listen for breakuppers who haven't read it yet. Free on YouTube. Oh, is it really free on YouTube? Yeah, it's an excellent book. It is excellent. Demented leading down. I would love to see like some kind of a Jeopardy between the two of them, you know. You should add an astrology section to your report where we predict Bitcoin price using obscure methods. Yeah, you know that Marin girl, she's amazing at that. But I'm a pretty big like a classical newspaper setup. You know, so to be honest, that's I've probably mentioned it here before, but when we first were doing like we put charts, you know, because remember CoinDesk started as more like an engineering, technical cryptographers news source, right? It was very technical. We added the Wall Street piece to it, right? So numbers, charts, all that, because of course, you know, cryptocurrencies are both the Wall Street and the engineering. And when we did that, we added a chart, you know, technical analysis person. And the old readers of CoinDesk were furious, right? Oh, the same way people get furious about ordinals or something, you know, they were losing it on us. Hate mail and what are you doing? You know, he's still there, Omkar. He's great, right? Omkar Godboil, just a great guy. And that was what we said. Look, you know, the technical analysis is like the horoscopes. It's the same thing, right? Can a newspaper have a horoscope section? And that's sort of how we talk people down off of that, right? But it is a good idea, Bitcoin Graffiti, as an intermezzo or ending for breaking up the breakup. I like it. I like it. It is a good idea. Thanks, Tommy. We love it. We love it. I saw Tommy had put the count from Sesame Street on Twitter the other day when I was spotted at an event, which is cool. Thanks, man. It's only embarrassing if you identify with it. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of good stuff with American national identity. I think that's what Bitcoin Graffiti is talking about. Bitcoin is freedom, indeed. Thankfully, I never believed the government. Why are we still having vax? And yeah, I agree, recycling guy. It's, you know, it's the vaccine stuff is super boring, right? Super boring. I hate it, as I mentioned a few times. But what I think here, I'm not really talking about the vaccines. Again, I don't know shit about them, right? Don't know anything about vaccines. Zero. I am not a vaccine expert at all. I know nothing. But this was not about vaccines. It was about science Battlefront, because that was always sort of a weak part, if you will, about the people pushing for this third rail stuff. In the same way that Bitcoiners complaining that economists, it's too complicated, you wouldn't understand, is sort of an attack vector for Bitcoiners, right? The minute you start saying, well, that's what we're saying. We're saying lower the IQ to participate. It should be more simple, right? So by abdicating the science Battlefront, by not engaging in this and trying to make it simple for people, it's a different question that vaccines good or bad, right? So I hope that came through. I don't want to make it sound like this is a resource for understanding vaccines. It is not. We are not your go-to for vaccine knowledge. We don't know shit, right? Nothing, like less than nothing. Because we can never well, that's the other thing too. And so on the vaccine front, never forget, I am for dropping people from space, right? I am for public executions. 4. 4. And really fun ones, right? Let's drop these guys from space. If we find out it's as bad as we think it is. I don't think Hotez is on the list of people getting dropped from space, by the way, right? It's the people who really lied. Did he really lie? I don't know. He might just be a coward, right? That's fine. You don't get dropped from space for being a coward. That's fine, right? Oh, here we go. Just finished Wizard of Oz, so I could really enjoy your work. Indeed. I think the green glasses are really the strong symbol in that novel. I gotta look that up. Vaccines are a perfect example why we need to break up with fiat. That's why. Yeah. That's why, again, as Daniel said, that I chose the word breakup for the title of the show because it is about it's a complicated thing, relationships, right? No matter what, we're in a relationship. Even if we're total Bitcoiners, we're still in a ridiculous relationship with this system, and it's untenable. It's gotta go in some direction, right? And Emerald City, yeah. It's policies on both left and right wings that were passed long ago that opened the door for that. Yeah. All right. That's all I got, team. Oh, let me see what we got here. One more. So it causes abandonment trauma with fiat. I think some people might be experiencing that. Yeah. Or at least don't want to experience that, right? They feel like that's what you're seeing, guys. That's what you're seeing out there, right? The anger when people are not wanting to see this stuff about the debate, or they're using ad hominem against RFK and willfully spreading the ad hominem. There is a form of abandonment trauma going on there, right? Denial stage of grief. Yeah. Sorry, Bitcoin Graffiti, you had asked me for a few of those on Twitter. I'm not an expert on actual breakups. I'm not an expert, but I'm going to learn a little bit more about those stages and see if I can mix it in. All right, team. That's all I got for today. I shall see you from the farm tomorrow. I will be there. Capitulate. Yeah, it was total capitulation. Total capitulation. Which is great news. It really is. Getting this. Definitely going to check it out. Bitcoin Graffiti. Definitely going to check it out. But that's all I got, guys. I'll see you. I'll probably be on the farm tomorrow. Peace.